students, we had started with division Bryophyta and we had completed life cycle of liverworts, example Mercantia. In this lesson we are going to see the other type of bryophytes, that is mosses. Division Bryophyta, mosses. What is the difference between liverworts and mosses? You can say that mosses are slightly more advanced than liverworts. In mosses as well, the main plant body will be the gametophyte. The gametophytic plant body is going to be upright, erect in case of the mosses, unlike the liverworts in which it is dorsiventral, flat, upraised to the ground. You must have seen mosses growing along the sides of the river, on rocks, etc. Just like the liverworts, they also thrive in moist and wet conditions. In liverworts also there are root-like, leaf-like, shoot-like structures. In mosses as well there are root, leaf and shoot-like structures. The root-like structures are called as rhizoids. In case of liverworts, the rhizoids are unicellular. In case of the mosses, the rhizoids are said to be multicellular. Found in moist, wet, shady places. Main plant body is the gametophyte, that will be haploid. However, the difference between this gametophyte and the gametophyte of the liverwort is that this gametophyte is upright, erect, and it is leafy. It is thalloid in liverworts and it is dorsiventral in liverworts. Has root-like, leaf-like, shoot-like structures. Root-like structures are called rhizoids, which are multicellular and branched. They are unicellular in case of liverworts. This is the dominant phase, green photosynthetic. This one is independent gametophytic plant body. What you say this is a moss is actually the gametophyte, not the sporophyte. What happens to the sporophyte in this case? In case of the algae, the sporophyte was just one cell thick. In case of the liverwort, which are the lower bryophytes, the sporophyte gained considerable size. Does it have photosynthetic pigments inside it? No, it does not. It is completely parasitic on that gametophyte. That is in case of the liverworts. In case of the mosses, how is the sporophyte? Now you will see that it has enlarged, okay, considerably, enlarged in size to a few centimeters big, and it has become light green in color, light, okay, not yellow as in liverworts. Why has it become light green in color? It is acquiring photosynthetic pigments, and you will see that it does photosynthesis. This is going to be partially dependent on the gametophyte, partially, not completely as in the liverworts. Why partially? Because this sporophyte is getting somewhat photosynthetic. Okay, what is it trying to do? It has become considerably bigger in case of the mosses. Now in pteridophytes, you will find that the main plant body will be the sporophyte itself. They are going to be completely independent. The sporophyte is going to be the main plant body in case of the pteridophytes. Right now we are in bryophytes, mosses. Over here you see that the sporophyte is somewhat bigger and it is somewhat photosynthetic, and it is partially dependent on the gametophyte. The sporophyte, if you remember this diagram, this is a moss, okay, the main plant body. This is the gametophyte, green photosynthetic, and after sexual reproduction the sporophyte will arise, okay, with such kind of a capsule. This is the sporophyte. The next generation after gametophyte is going to be N, sporophyte is going to be 2N. This is the sporophyte that we are talking about. The sporophyte is going to be partially dependent on gametophyte, not completely. It's a partial parasite. It will be light green, partially photosynthetic. Some examples of mosses include Funaria, the most popular one. There's one called Sphagnum, called as the peat moss, Polytrichum. We will be learning about mosses in more detail by studying the life cycle of Funaria. Life cycle of Funaria. Funaria is monoecious. We will be completing this life cycle how we did for liverworts, like a circle. In case of Funaria, so this is the gametophyte. It is green, leafy, photosynthetic, independent. It's also said to be a leafy gametophyte. It's also called as a mature gametophyte. Mature or adult gametophyte. Why is it called so? Is because before becoming this leafy gametophyte, this gametophyte goes through another primary stage which we will see in this life cycle. Remember the liverworts, the two gametophytes, male thallus and the female thallus? What was the deal with the gametophytes? They bear sex organs and they have to produce gametes. That's why they are called as the gametophytes, isn't it? They have to produce gametes and they have to bear sex organs on them. You remember the sex organs of the liverworts? They were born on the archegoniophore and the antheridiophore, isn't it? The female sex organ was called as the archegonium and the male sex organ was called as the antheridium. They were born on separate thalli. This one is monoecious. Markentia was dioecious, right? This one is monoecious. Both the sex organs will be on the same gametophyte since they are monoecious. They will be born at the tip of these structures. The female and the male sex organs will be called as archegonium and antheridium, just like in case of the liverworts. So they will be bearing sex organs, at tips of axis. So these are the sex organs. The female sex organ is called as the archegonium. Male sex organ is called as the antheridium. Same as in case of the liverworts, archegonium and antheridium. This is the shape of its sex organs. This one, as you know, is flask shaped, multicellular jacketed. This portion is called as the neck and this portion, swollen portion over here is called as the venter. Neck has some cells lined in here. They are called as the neck canal cells, all haploid, which will release chemotactic substances for attracting the male gametes towards itself. Venter canal cell, which provides nourishment to the growing embryo, and finally the female gamete or the egg cell, which is also haploid. All structures are haploid over here. This entire structure is haploid and the sex organs that are born, including the gametes, everything is haploid, gametophyte, okay, haploid generation. How about the antheridium? Antheridium also multicellular jacketed. Inside this there will be sperm mother cells. Sperm mother cells will undergo the process of mitosis, very similar to liverworts. As you can see, each sperm mother cell will produce such kind of cells, male gametes, which are also called as antheridia, also called as antherozoids. Describe the male gametes, comma shaped. What else? They are biflagellate, exactly like the ones in liverworts. So the sex organs and the gametes produced are similar in liverworts and in mosses. Now what is going to happen? Mosses are also amphibians of the plant kingdom, isn't it? Why? Because they require water. Why they need water? For completing their sexual reproduction phase. All plants require water. Even the terrestrial plants require water, but they require water for transpiration, absorption and for photosynthesis, isn't it? Angiosperms do not need water for reproduction, except in exceptional cases. With water, what is going to happen? It's going to rain, there is going to be water everywhere. The neck canal cells will dissolve and release chemotactic substances. And because of the influence of these chemotactic substances, these comma-shaped biflagellate antherozoids will travel all the way and will enter the archegonium and bring about fertilization of the egg cell. So they will move towards the archegonium by chemotaxis and bring about fertilization / syngamy. So what is going to happen now? After fertilization, the first cell that is formed will be the zygote. The zygote will be the first cell of the sporophyte. Agree? What had this sporophyte done in case of the liverworts? It had undergone mitosis, right? In algae, it had undergone meiosis. In case of mosses, what does it do? It will undergo the process of mitosis and will form a multicellular sporophyte, which will emerge from here because the sex organs were located here, right? And will emerge from here and appear in this manner. That is going to be the sporophyte over the gametophyte. Gametophyte is N, sporophyte will be 2N. And how is it going to appear? Light green. It has just started to experience photosynthesis, and in pteridophytes it's going to become completely independent. At this point, it is partially dependent on gametophyte. In case of liverworts, it is completely dependent. In case of the mosses, it will be partially dependent on the gametophyte because it is going to take up some photosynthesis. It is also sometimes known as partial parasite, whereas the sporophyte of liverworts will be called as complete parasite. The sporophyte also has three structures: capsule, seta and the foot. Let us zoom out this capsule and see what's there inside. Okay, this is the capsule. This is some AIDS related information. This diagram is not there in NCERT. So the certain parts are, this part over here in the center is called as the columella. It has nutritive tissue. This is called as the theca, sac-like structures. This has spore mother cells. Remember spore mother cells? In liverworts also there were spore mother cells. Over here also there are spore mother cells. This opening over here is called as the operculum. This is meant for dehiscence, and it has certain things called as peristomial teeth, which will be like 2 rows of cells, and they are exactly 32 in number only. That's why they are called as peristomial teeth. And the drying of those peristomial teeth leads to contraction of the operculum, and it aids in the dehiscence process. This portion over here is called as apophysis. Apophysis is the region that has photosynthetic pigments plus primitive types of stomata. Stomata, which are present in the sporophytes of angiosperms. The theca houses the spore mother cells. What had the spore mother cells of the liverworts done? They had undergone the process of meiosis and had produced spores, isn't it? Which were haploid. What about here? These cells also will undergo the process of meiosis and will produce spores, which will be haploid homospores. Once the water contained inside this capsule dries out, this operculum and the peristomial teeth are going to help in the dehiscence of these spores to the outside. The spores will be liberated outside and they will be in the air and settle on the surface of substratum. These spores are going to be the first cells of new gametophytes. New gametophytes. They will be haploid. Now what will happen to these spores? The spores are going to germinate and will form the gametophyte. However, before becoming this leafy gametophyte, the spores of the mosses germinate to form such kind of filamentous type of structures, which will grow and will finally form the mature gametophyte. So before becoming this leafy gametophyte, the gametophyte will be filamentous gametophyte. Initially they will be unbranched, and then later on these filaments will start branching profusely and will eventually form this type of leafy gametophyte. This filamentous gametophyte is called as the protonema stage. Very important point from NCERT. Protonema. This filamentous gametophyte of the mosses, prior to it becoming the leafy gametophyte, is called as the protonema stage. Protonema stage is seen in the gametophytes of mosses. You remember the first chapter, Living World, we had discussed, in case there is one example cited there, for asexual reproduction, I think fragmentation, the protonema is able to undergo. This first stage is called as the primary protonema, and the second stage, wherein it becomes profusely branched, is called as the secondary protonema. Difference between primary and secondary protonema is that secondary protonema will be very much branched, photosynthetic, and it is able to undergo fragmentation process. And it is from the lateral buds of these protonema that the leafy gametophyte will be produced eventually. The secondary protonema will further grow and will form the mature gametophyte. Filamentous gametophyte, also called as the juvenile gametophyte. Juvenile means young. Nema means thread. Is there anything that is thread-like in this? Yeah, right? Thread-like. Protonema stage. Proto means first stage. First thread-like stage. And this is the mature stage. So, how would you describe the gametophyte of the mosses? How is it different? Liverworts do not have the protonema stage. Mosses have the protonema stage. Another difference between liverworts and mosses is that, you remember liverworts had one dispersal mechanism, elaters. Elaters are not present in case of the mosses. You can mention here, elaters are absent. Elaters which are meant for dehiscence, present in liverworts. So this is the life cycle of the mosses. Gametophyte, as you see, is the predominant stage here all this time, and the sporophyte stage starts from here. So it lasts only till this time, and after which this is the second stage. If you plot this entire thing on a pie chart, what would you find? That a large chunk of their life cycle is taken over by the gametophyte, and part of it is it's not very less also, considerable part is also occupied by the 2N stage, the sporophyte. Each generation gives rise to the next generation. N gives rise to 2N, 2N gives rise to N again, N will germinate and again will give rise to 2N. That's how they will continue to live. What kind of a life cycle is this called? This is called as the haplodiplontic life cycle. Clear? We are looking at the lifespan of both generations of mosses. If you see, a majority of the lifespan is covered by the gametophytic phase, right? And almost half of it is covered by the 2N phase, sporophytic phase as well. Almost half and half. Haplodiplontic life cycle it is called. I had mentioned earlier. Haplodiplontic life cycle. If we start the life cycle with the spores, right? So it's going to extend in this direction. Earlier stage will be the protonema stage. Later stage will be the leafy stage. Both stages are called as the gametophytic stage. protonema stage, there is the primary protonema, then there is the secondary protonema, finally forming the leafy stage. Leafy stage will have the sex organs, and there will be gametogenesis, leading to the formation of gametes, which will undergo the process of syngamy to produce the first cell of the sporophyte, that will be the zygote. Once the zygote is formed, it will mature into a sporophyte, partially dependent sporophyte, which will undergo the process of, there will be spore mother cells in the picture, right, which will undergo the process of meiosis and will form the spores, the first cells of gametophyte. That's how the life cycle continues. Let us look at the differences between liverworts and mosses. How was the gametophyte? In case of the liverworts, it was thalloid, it was dorsiventral. In case of mosses, it has two stages, protonema stage and the leafy stage. And the leafy stage is not thalloid, it is upright. Leafy or folio stage it is called. How about the sporophyte? In case of the liverworts, it is a complete parasite on gametophyte. In case of mosses, it is said to be a partial parasite on gametophyte. Both are dependent though. Okay, this one is also dependent, this one is also dependent, but this is completely dependent and this is partially dependent. Fine. In case of liverworts, you can say that it is non-photosynthetic. In case of mosses, it is partially photosynthetic. Next, elater mechanism. Elater mechanism, a mechanism for dispersal of spores, is present only in case of the liverworts. It's not present in case of the mosses. Elater mechanism present in liverworts, absent in mosses. Differences between liverworts and mosses.
महादेव के नाम पे सब्सक्राइब कर दे।